Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. In the village Konoha, village hidden in the tree leaves, things were in utter and complete chaos. The reason for was that the Kyuubi no Kitsune, nine-tailed demon fox, was attacking the village. Normally, the Kyuubi would be sealed within a person with the Kyuubi's powers sealed within the person. This person is known as a Jinchuriki, power of the human sacrifice, but a mysterious masked man with a Sharingan copy wheel eye had taken advantage of the current Jinchuriki who had been in labor giving birth and had ripped the Kyuubi from its Jinchuriki and set it upon the village. Normally the Kyuubi would not dream of attacking the village and was on fairly good terms with the person he was sealed into, but the masked man placed him under a powerful genjutsu using his Sharingan and set him on a rampage on the village. Currently, the fourth Hokage, Namikaze Minato, and his dying wife, Uzumaki Kushina, the Jinchuriki, were at the outskirts of the village, having managed to contain the beast and were preparing to seal it away. Minato made a string of hand seals and a complex sealing array appeared around him and Kushina. Kushina, Minato said, I'm going to use the Shiki Fuin, dead demon consuming seal, to seal away the Kyuubi's Yang chakra into Naruto while I seal the Yin chakra into myself. Minato. Kushina pleaded with her husband, please think about this. You could seal it into me, I'm dying, and I could take the Kyuubi, nine tails, along with me, but using the Shiki Fuin will cost you your soul. It's the only solution to our problem. Your dying and taking the Kyuubi would upset the balance of Biju between the great nations, Minato replied grimly. I'll seal him into Naruto, to protect the village. And I can seal some of our chakra into him as well to help him when he's older and can access our chakra. Kushina thought carefully about her husband's reasoning and reluctantly agreed. Alright, but if you are going to seal him away, then let me help. With my clan's techniques, his entire being can be sealed away into Naruto safely. Alright. Minato looked at the strongest of all Biju-tailed beasts, let's begin. As Minato went through a string of hand seals to summon the Shinigami, death god, to seal the Kyuubi, Kushina used her ability to create Kongo Fusa, adamantine sealing chains, to hold the Kyuubi in place. Minato then placed Naruto on the sealing altar summoned in the center of the sealing array. Kushina made several hand seals in the sealing array for the merged with additional layers of Fuinjutsu sealing technique. The sealing array is ready, Minato-kun. Kushina said. Please hurry. Right. Minato made several seals. Kinjutsu. Shiki Fuin. Fuin. Forbidden technique. Dead demon consuming seal. Seal. The Kyuubi restrained by the chains slowly became smaller and got into the seal that appeared on Naruto's stomach. 15 minutes later the Sandaime Hokage and a retinue of Anbu would come upon the scene only to see the dead bodies of the Hokage and his wife along with the baby crying on the sealing altar, the ink of the seal still fresh on his belly. 5 years after Kyuubi attack, a small child with blonde hair and whisker-marked cheeks, dressed in a tan shirt and green shorts, ran away from a group of villagers as fast as his little legs could carry him after getting kicked out of the orphanage. The raving mob chasing after Naruto threw bottles, stone or any throwable object at the running child. As Naruto ran, he still remembered his last beating 4 weeks ago, when he was out wandering the streets. Frightened by the glares, and the constant whispers, demon, of, freak, emanating from any villager he passed by. Why do they always hurt me and what do they mean by demon? Naruto thought. He quickly turned to a distant alley and jumped into an empty dumpster. After he was sure he lost the mob, the blonde pariah jumped out of the dumpster and sighed in relief. The adrenaline from the chase finally running dry and the exhaustion finally coming to him, Naruto slumped against the wall and quickly dozed off from sheer exhaustion. Naruto's mindscape. As Naruto began to wake up, he found himself free of wounds and in what he recognized as an enormous sewer as he remembered hiding in a few from villagers and shinobi after pranking them. It was dank and as he got up he noticed that he was in ankle-deep water, but strangely enough neither him or his clothes got wet. Quickly taking stock he noticed that the walls and ceilings were running with blue and red pipes. Wanting to explore the sewer, he decided to follow the direction the red pipes were going in. Someone should really think about sticking some lights in here. It'll do wonders for this place, Naruto murmured to himself, as he walked along the red pipe that seemed to go deeper into the sewer. He walked down the corridor, which opened into an enormous chamber where all the red and blue pipes converged. It was a set of immense barred gates, easily several stories high and even further. Right in the center was a paper tag with really complicated looking lines and squiggles all over it. All Naruto could read was the kanji on the center of the paper, which was titled, Seal. Curious, he walked closer and tried to peer into the darkness beyond the gates through the gaps in the bars of the gate. The gap led into another large chamber, completely dark, so could not see farther than few feet inside of the gates. With the natural curiosity of a child, made Naruto step inside of the gates through the bars, only to freeze in total terror when he heard a low rumbling sound, like an animal growling, followed by a deep booming voice. So, my flesh bag whelp of a jailer finally decides to visit his prisoner. Naruto blinked and looked up. The moment he did, he saw a pair of giant blood-red eyes suddenly peering at him through the darkness. Caught by surprise, the boy let out a startled scream and scrambled back till he was out the barred gate. He quickly ran back and was able to get a view of the pair of slitted irises and the entity that they were attached to. The moment he put space between himself and the iron gates, light suddenly poured into the chamber and the prone form of a gargantuan orange fox emerged from the shadows. The fox rested its head on his front paws, and Naruto saw 9 tails in the darkness behind and saw how that the tails reached all the way to the ceiling. The giant fox grunted drearily at the sight of his container. Not too impressive considering you're still just a child, but certainly a change from my last 2 cells. Naruto felt the warm wind as the fox spoke and how the water rippled. With the now illuminated room, Naruto was able to see that chamber was an enormous cell and the fox was inside it. The fox itself about several times larger than any building in the village. By his estimate, it was gigantic. But after the initial terror and surprise, Naruto was not scared one bit. Now seeing the giant animal-like entity, the blonde child's chubby face curved into a smile and pointed up at him. Cat. He saw the massive animal's orange fur bristle and change to one of outrage. I'm not a goddamn cat, you braindead fleshbag. The water around the chamber rippled rapidly, creating waves, and the red pipes glowed an angry red in response of the giant beast's anger. Blinking in surprise after its outburst, the blonde beamed. You've got whiskers. Cats have whiskers. If you are not a cat, then what are you? Naruto asked. By the sage, are you honestly this stupid? Do you know who I am? The giant fox grounded through his teeth. Nope. Naruto shrugged. Wanting to bite his own tails off, the giant monster growled and fixed its best death glare onto the child, staring cheerfully up at him. I'm the great and all-powerful Kyuubi no Kitsune, or what the people of your village like to call the 9-tailed demon fox. Call me whatever you like. Oh. Naruto simply replied in response, tilting his head up as he looked at the gigantic creature, who continued to glare down at him impatiently. So, this was the 9-tailed demon fox, the same demon that attacked his village all those years ago. It had been another peaceful night in Konoha and another beautiful sunrise, a predetermined event that told everyone across the country that all was right with the universe. The rays of light from the shining golden ball that flew across the sky filtered down onto the landscape, illuminating every corner and filling in every shadow. Peeking over the rolling hillsides and forests, the sun's magnificent gaze soon reached Konohagakure, the hidden leaf village, which greeted its warmth with a welcoming breeze and the glow of sweet dew built up from the night before. The picturesque blend of nature with human settlement, along with the marvel known as the Hokage monument sitting comfortably in the background, made the glimmering scene of faultlessness a sight to behold. It as if an artist painted the entire village based on their own thoughts of what the most tranquil place in the world was like every waking hour. If it were not flying the flag of a shinobi village or was plagued with such a questionable history, it would have been paradise. To the people living inside of its walls, though, it was just home. This was precisely what ran through a particular shopkeeper's mind as he prepared to open the doors of his business to the populace. Immediately upon pushing up the roller door of his general items store, he stretched his back and greeted the sun with a sleepy yawn. He stepped out onto the street with a delightful smile on his face. That was until he turned around and looked up at the front of his shop that had been passed down to him from his father and from his father's father before him. A shriek escaped his lips and he jumped further out into the middle of the road. What? What in the name of Kami? It was horrifying. His shop was covered in paintings of various symbols, words that should never be uttered in public, and images that were either too abstract to make out or too shocking to even talk about. Not only that, but the poor salesman's building was not the only one that was hit by the maelstrom of paint works. From left to right, up and down the neighborhood, every single roof, wall, door, window, and fence in sight was covered in the atrocious street art. It wasn't even the good, tasteful kind of street art either. It was terrible graffiti, single-colored, time-wasting bull one could find in any seedy alleyway. Almost everyone who was awake at this time and outside was looking up, horrified at their once glamorous suburb. What is this? How terrible. Disgraceful. It's everywhere. Honey. Look. Even the clothes on the line got painted. Who did this? As questions and exclamations began filtering out from every villager and shopkeeper present, boisterous laughter suddenly filled the air and forced everyone in the vicinity to crane their heads towards a nearby overpass. There, standing on top of a cluster of drainpipes straddling the gap, the culprit responsible for the crime stood over the crowd far below with his arms proudly folded, a bucket at his feet and a wide grin on his face. The blonde's grin flashed into view once all eyes landed on him. With that announcement made, he wasted no time in making his getaway and took off down the street at speed, leaping across from rooftop to rooftop. Come back here. Damn it. It was him again. For a 7-year-old academy student, he was damn quick. The villagers could do nothing except attempt to give chase, point fingers and throw curses at him as he vacated the premises with feet quicker than a cat running from a garden hose. Within seconds he was out of sight, leaving behind a trail of destruction and fuming citizens. The owner of the general store growled and crossed his arms, now standing amongst a whole crowd of villagers who had also been attacked by the little menace. What a nuisance. He's made a big mess. The man next to him nodded in agreement. Even if we want to file a complaint, he's got no parents we can speak to. What'll we do? Another concerned villager asked, a woman who turned out with the rest of the crowd holding up her summer kimono, now covered in colored paint, reading the blasted perpetrator's name. Who's going to pay for all of this? By the time the unpleasantness started to waft off the targets for that day, Naruto was long gone and running down a random road many blocks away. He was still grinning mischievously from ear to ear and giggling nonstop, thoroughly satisfied at what he had been able to accomplish in a short half hour. If he were a dog, then he would have claimed that entire area as his territory. He exclaimed, laughing out loud as the paint bucket he had trailing behind him rattled on the wind. Naruto. 500. Villager idiots. 0. He stuck his tongue out in the general direction of his now faraway victims. Once he was certain that he had pulled far enough away from the danger zone, Naruto allowed his sprint to slow to a jog before dropping into a comfortable stride. He grinned in the satisfaction of seeing all the villagers' reactions to his latest felony and bathed in the afterglow. However, while he was walking down a quiet suburb way out of reach of anyone bound to be seeking revenge on him, he stopped when he heard a familiar call from nearby. I'm heading off, Mum. Eyes training left as his feet carted to a stop. Naruto saw the door to one of the nearby homes open and a boy around his age come running out, shortly followed by whom he guessed was his younger brother and their mother. The mother stopped the younger of the two from running off hastily by holding out 2 bento boxes, all neatly wrapped and ready for them. It was a homemade meal only a loving family member could prepare for her children. Hold on, sweetie. You forgot something, the mother exclaimed, smiling cheerfully at her children. Did you make us omelets? The younger brother asked eagerly while tackling his older brother in a playful manner. Is it omelets? He asked hopefully. They looked up to see their mother beaming at them. Of course, I did. I made a lot for my boys. Yay. Both cheered excitedly, after which they then ran off with their bento boxes held overhead, like they were trophies won in contest and needed to be elevated. They celebrated their way down the street, looking back to see their mother waving at them. Be careful you two, she yelled out to them. We will, Mum, the older brother called. Love you. Naruto's expression sunk as he watched the two siblings head on their way while their mother saw them off from her home's doorsteps. After a few seconds of looking and watching the happy parent walk back inside, he floundered over the memory of the warm bond he saw that they shared as a family. The blonde then turned his gaze back to the road ahead of him again and he shuffled on. With his head and his spirit set low, he began dragging his feet away to wherever the road took him. Anime and manga. Where? Well, that was a question he would really like answered. Obviously, no one was waiting for him back home. No one was waiting for him anywhere. Naruto then shook his head quickly. I can't let a unreal dream bother me so much. If I want to be the best shinobi, I need to be strong and cool. And I'm going to be both. The blonde recited quietly with a grin. He nodded assertively to himself when he parted from the suburb, heading off to wherever his body wanted to take him. I'm gonna get some training in. It was still early in the morning, he'd had his fun messing with the villagers, and he had a full day's daylight left to burn. At least that's what Uzumaki Naruto thought. A shadow from in front of the crouching blonde fell over them and forced Naruto to look up. When he did look up, he saw his academy instructor, Iruka Umino, standing over him with his hands on his hips and a severe look on his face that pretty much said, "You're in big trouble." The tapping of his foot only added to the tense feeling, giving the blonde a moment to pause and comprehend his current situation. Silence prevailed between them, while the villagers scattered across the street stared with heavy anticipation hanging in the air. After a minute or so of the tense and heavy silence, with nothing being spoken between the two, Naruto sprouted his trademark grin and pointed up at the man. I found you, Iruka-sensei. The man's face bristled before he went into full rage mode, complete with his patented big head jutsu, idiot. I found you. You've got it all backwards. Hey, so you still find me after all. He grinned. Yeah, I should have been in my class teaching right now, but instead, the Hokage sent an Anbu to me and wanted me to catch the troublemaker who's been running through these streets for a while now. Iruka said, folding his arms and watching the boy rise to his feet and dust down his shorts. Even with this statement, the blonde wasn't worrying about his predicament in the slightest. Are you going to come quietly, or do I have to drag you away from here kicking and screaming? Well, other people would normally come quietly, but personally, I prefer leaving a scene kicking and screaming. It's way more fun than walking. Naruto replied without hesitation, earning a shake of the head from his normally agreeable teacher. But before anything else happens, I have a quick question for you, sensei. Fire away. If you're here, talking with me, Naruto pointed at his chest before gesturing towards the Hokage Tower where the academy was also located, then who's looking after the rest of the idiots? Anime and manga. Mizuki. I finally had a good reason to get that lazy assistant teacher to do some actual work around my class instead of just dropping in whenever he feels like it, Iruka replied sternly, wondering whether his friend would be able to hold down the fort in his stead. Of course, seeing as how they were both disciplined and mature, Chunin the scar-faced instructor didn't think he had anything to worry about, and dismissed any further thoughts on the matter. He had a more pressing issue standing before him. As for you, you and I need to have a little chat regarding your absence from this morning's lecture. Oh no, Naruto replied despondent, slumping shoulders. Let me guess, detention. Yep, and I will think more about the punishment for your pranks later. Iruka gave faux smile, before reaching out and grabbing the boy by the ear. The blonde yelped in pain when he found his full weight and body being dragged down the road by his earlobe. He was forced to stumble along at an incredibly fast pace to keep up with his smirking teacher. Right now, I'm taking you back to the academy. Ow, 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 hey, be careful, Iruka-sensei. You're going to rip my ear off. Ugh, Iruka-sensei is so mean. Naruto mumbled while massaging his aching and tortured ear. Yeah, he had come back to the academy with Iruka. The Ninja Academy of Konoha. It was the place where young boys and girls entered to become ninja for the village. It was this place that saw the birth of some of the strongest shinobi to ever come out of Konoha. The Densetsu no Sanin Great Three Ninjas, Shiroi Kiba, the White Fang, and the most famous of all, the Yondaime Hokage, Fourth Hokage, also known as the Kiroi Senko, Yellow Flash. Currently, a very special group of students were having their first month of class. What makes this group so special? The answer was simple. This class of students were the next generation of heirs of many of the major clans of Konoha. These young soon-to-be shinobi were the future leaders of the village, and it was the Ninja Academy of Konoha where they would start their first step towards being proud shinobi and kunoichi of the leaf. Unfortunately, I'm just a normal child and an orphan. He thought sadly, but then became serious. But that doesn't mean that I will give up easily. I will surely become the best ninja of Konoha. He promised himself determinedly. The young boy was taken out of his thoughts by the sound of a sigh to his right. The sigh made the young blonde turn to his right to see who that was. He guessed the person was probably as bored as him, and he was not surprised to see who it was. After all, she always seated herself in this same spot besides him. This girl had jet black hair that was pulled into a ponytail barely reaching the start of her back, and two ebony locks framed her face. Coal black eyes and pale porcelain skin. The girl was wearing a simple blue shirt that had her clan's symbol on the back of it, and she was also wearing some white shorts and a pair of blue sandals. The girl was none other than Uchiha Sasuke, daughter of the head of the Uchiha clan and younger sister of the infamous Uchiha prodigy Uchiha Izumi. She's one of the top students, and her family probably already taught her the lesson. It's no wonder she's bored. The blonde thought and started yawning. So boring, I think I'll read the book which Gigi gave me. Maybe if he talked about Uchiha Madoka this would at least be a little interesting, but the only thing the instructor talked about has been Senju Hashirama and his almighty Mokuden would release, thought the young Uchiha. She had gotten more than tired of the endless lectures about the Shadaime. It was no surprise that she was more interested in Uchiha Madoka than Senju Hashirama. After all, the mighty Kunoichi and her Oni-san had been her idols as long as she could remember. Sure, she was considered a traitor to the village, a monster to the rest of the world as she destroyed a certain clan and slaughtered its people, but no one could deny that she still was considered the one of the powerful shinobi to walk the nations, and power like that was something every Uchiha wanted to achieve. The young Ravenette was taken out of her thoughts by the feeling of someone watching her, but when she turned, she saw the young blonde that always beside her, reading a scroll, completely ignoring the lesson of the Chunin instructor. Sasuke herself had never spoke to the blonde boy. The reason for that was actually quite simple. Making friends was not her strong part. In fact, from all the other kids in the class she didn't talk to anyone. The reason she always sat here was that on the first day there had been no other spots except for the one next to Naruto. Since then, she had sat there even when there were other available spots, because, unlike most students in the class, Naruto was quiet, something she appreciated. After all, she was here to prepare herself to be a kunoichi, not make friends. So, it was with a raised brow that the young Uchiha looked at the young blonde, a little curious about what he was reading. After a few moments of staring, the Ravenette went back to paying attention to the class, even though it was a waste of time. Meanwhile, the young blonde had already forgotten about the lesson and was immersed in the scroll that found in the library. It was scroll on the history of the Hokage and he was quite interested in it. Thankfully, the librarian was part of a minority that didn't hate him, so Naruto could read and even borrow books and scrolls from there without a card. Not many people truly knew about Naruto as he always acted like one-dimensional hyperactive idiot and a dead last in his class. Because after all, if he learned one thing from his experiences and from his idol, the Yondaime Hokage, a shinobi must never reveal their skills unless it is absolute necessary and takes advantage of the surprise it causes and capitalizes on it. Suddenly Iruka-sensei's voice brought Naruto out of his reading. He asked everyone to step out in the academy training ground for their weekly taijutsu spars. Anime and manga. Naruto and the rest of the class were in the academy training ground. Everyone circled around the training ring for the taijutsu spars. Mizuki started calling out students by random. The girls went first and had their spars. Their spars were mostly pathetic except for two girls. The first one was Hyuga Hinata. She was called for the spar and beat her opponent into the ground. She could have ended the spar much sooner if the spars were not bound to only the basic academy fighting style. The gentle fist which Naruto had read about briefly was supposed to be a vicious style of taijutsu able to incapacitate opponents with the touch of finger. The other was unsurprisingly Uchiha Sasuke. He had to admit that she was the best of the girls. She defeated her opponent soundly and showed no mercy. He felt sorry for the poor girl who was her opponent. Sasuke was skilled in taijutsu and everyone could see that she could probably even defeat the boys. She was trained well and it was clear the Uchiha Sasuke was a prodigy just like her sister. Of course, that Uchiha brat still isn't your rival, at least right now anyway. A voice echoed in Naruto's ears. Oh, hey Kurama, Ahaya, good morning. Naruto greeted the Biju. You never can be sure of anything before you see it for yourself. He replied to his earlier remark watching the raven-haired girl. But I really want to spar with her if I have the chance. Yamanaka Ino vs Haruno Sakura. Mizuki called and both girls stepped into the ring. They were the last of the girls' sparring match. Give it up billboard brow and it'll save you the embarrassment. Ino said smugly. In your dreams Ino Bunta, Ino pig. Today I'll show Kiba-kun who is the best with him. Sakura screeched back infuriating Ino. Kurama groaned inside Naruto. The spar between two great howler monkey fangirls. Great. Something told me this won't be a spar. Naruto commented, sweat dropping. Hajime. Iruka announced that start and both girls charged at each other. The spar, if it could be called that, was quite funny. There was no taijutsu style, just a lot of slapping, hair pulling and cursing about who would be with their precious Kiba-kun. Said boy didn't pay attention to the fangirls and was busy flirting with Sasuke to go out with him. The Uchiha heiress just ignored him and watched the spar. She seemed not too interested in it though. In the end, the spar was broken off by Iruka. Seriously. And everyone calls them kunoichi in the future. What's so special about that dog brat that most of girls are crazy for him? He is the heir of Inuzuka clan, one of more famous clans in Konoha. They'll have honor and prestige, become his wife and the next matriarch of the clan. A boy with great status, so it's no wonder that he has fangirls going after him. Naruto sighed. And he goes hounding after the Uchiha brat no matter how many times he is turned down by her. Kurama remarked mockingly. Iruka then started calling the boys for their turns in the ring. There were some decent matches and some strange ones too, like the one with between Shikamaru and Choji. They were friends as Choji was from Akamichi clan and Shikamaru was a Nara. Choji didn't want to fight his best friend and Shikamaru gave up, groaning that it was too troublesome to fight and he would rather watch the clouds. Iruka fumed and called the match in Choji's favor while the rest of the class were amused at the lazy Nara's antics. Shino was then called and defeated his opponent easily. Uzumaki Naruto vs Inuzuka Kiba. Mizuki called out and the girls started cheering, hooted yelling, "Go Kiba-kun! You're the best Kiba-kun!" and similar forms of encouragement. The Inuzuka smiled with a smug face. He was happy his opponent was the dead last dobi of the academy. There was no reason for him not to lose Naruto. Prepare to be beaten to a pulp, loser. Kiba smirked. We will see kibble breath. Naruto said with a cheerfully, and this provoked the Inuzuka. Anime and manga. Hajime. The match proceeded in a way no one thought it would. A battle of wills and grit commenced. as one of the two boys doggedly chased his opponent all across the ring, with a flurry of ferocious dashes and attacks while the other pulled him along as though he were attached by a string. The most surprising aspect about this show, though, was that Naruto wasn't the one doing the chasing. It was the other way around. Everybody watched on as the two academy students played cat and mouse with each other. One opponent was getting incredibly frustrated from not being able to land a single hit, whereas the other one was grinning from ear to ear while moving and dodging out of the way of every swing. The way Naruto was dodging his opponent notably was going against every single taijutsu rule, maneuver and technique in the book. Not bad, Kit. The Kyuubi grinned while observing the interesting spar of his container. Whilst others would simply weave, leap away, keep their distance or move around their enemies to outpace them, not that he wasn't doing it, Naruto was sticking at extremely close range to his target despite the onslaught of attacks and dodging from inside his opponent's innermost range. Damn it. When did the Dobi become so much faster than before? Kiba gritted his teeth while giving chase, swinging at his target with straights and hooks. Naruto in response moved back, swaying, and throwing his upper body this way and that, avoiding the sharp blows while staying directly in front of the teen, almost taunting him with his smile. You can dodge well, but how the hell are you going to throw attacks at me from those angles? A sharp roundhouse kick came to nail Naruto across the face, but he swayed back to dodge it at the last second before springing back up, his face appearing just inches in front of Naruto's. The piercing blue eyes of the blonde met the Inuzuka, the latter's gaze widening in shock when he was confronted by the blank stare of his opponent. What? Kiba blinked, a split second before realizing Naruto was just standing directly in front of him and staring at him. He had his left over his shoulder. Damn it! A jab shot out, but the blonde suddenly zipped out of his line of sight and the Inuzuka ended up hitting nothing but air. Emitting a frustrated growl, the Fang boy looked left and right before swiveling about 180 degrees, where he saw his opponent circling him with his hands and guard hanging at his sides. How the, what? Kiba was baffled. How is he moving like that? Ino spoke up from where she stood. What is he, like a cat or something? No human being should be able to bend that way and at such speed and manage to escape so quickly. Immediately, the rest of the cheerleading squad once again began voicing their undying support for the genius of the academy. They cupped their hands to their mouths and cried out his name. Kiba-kun. You can do it. Sakura shouted. Beat the class clown, Kiba-kun. You're awesome. Don't let that idiot mess with you. He's pathetic. You can knock that slacker's butt to the ground easy. Come on, Kiba-kun. Kiba gritted his and tried to tune out the shouting from the fan club. It wasn't exactly helping him focus. The dog boy rushed into Naruto and missed again and again. Kiba dashed straight at Naruto again, the crowd swooning when the genius dove in with a beautifully corked up left straight. He was clearly intent on bringing this battle to close range, to trap his opponent on the edge, to cut off his escape and to bring him to heel with a quick takedown. However, just as he was getting within striking distance, Naruto hovering outside of range of his punch suddenly dove in to meet him halfway. Anime and manga. In the blink of an eye, Naruto's face was stopped just inches from his target. The speed he used shocked the Inuzuka. A split second later, the blonde in front of him spun around and allowed him to dive right past him, resulting in the dog boy's fist striking nothing but air again. Stop messing around, Kiba said loudly. All right. Naruto grinned teasingly. As you wish. He dug his feet into the ground and widened his stance. He stood just outside of Kiba's reach, signaling everyone he was now ready to duke it out. No more running. At this time, everyone totally focused on the match. Even Sasuke started looking over the spar and couldn't take her eyes off it. Let's see what you've really got, loser. Kiba thought, clenching his left for a straight. The distance between them was quickly cut away and the Inuzuka was ready to begin. However, just as Kiba's left was being drawn back for a punch, a sudden flash of light froze him, followed shortly by a sharp pain and the distinct echo of a sharp thump, like a deft bag was just hit by a jackhammer. From the crowd's point of view, It was instantaneous. Naruto was the one to make the first move against his opponent, but instead of pulling off some predictable wild swing or busting out one of his stupid moves from before, what he did stunned every single person on the field. All the crowd saw from where they were standing was the blurred motion of his fist, the boy's left being drawn back from a clear hit and a cloud of sweat exploding off Kiba's face, the latter's head recoiling from the unexpected impact of a blazingly fast punch nobody was able to see. The dog boy stumbled back a few, head still ed upwards, and a shocked look slapped clean across his face. Naruto looked straight into his opponent's astonished eyes, awaiting a response, but then he froze once he saw Kiba's situation. Damn! Naruto cursed in his head and straightened up out of his stance quickly. Well, I suppose it's so much for the Inuzuka brat. He's still a little kid after all. Kurama said, but couldn't help feeling satisfied with the result. But it will put him in his place, he thought with a smirk. Quote. I'm sorry Iruka-sensei, Mizuki-sensei. I think I got too rough with him. He smiled nervously. Iruka raised his eyebrow and stepped forward. What? You only threw one punch, and you didn't even give the sign of reconciliation. Well, Naruto became even more confused. Feeling something strange, the Chunin detached himself from his notes and pushed his way into the ring. Shortly arriving at the scene of the disturbance with the boys, Iruka looked down at the Inuzuka. What is it now? He asked curiously, but then he widened his eyes. Holy crap! Hearing the voice of their sensei, the rest of class ran to him, wondering what exactly was wrong with Kiba until they all backed away in shock. Uchiha Sasuke was stunned. She couldn't believe what her eyes were seeing. Never she thought she would witness right here, on the spar of the annoying mud and the dobi, which she always set a default for her wasting time. It was natural that Kiba would win and Naruto was knocked out like usual. At first, Sasuke just wanted the boring matches to finish and then she could go home to train with her sister. It would be better than watching useless students play together. But she was wrong today, as something truly unexpected had happened. She saw it when she came closer with her class. Inuzuka Kiba, one of the top boys in the class, was out cold. Anime and manga. His face was frozen in a look of dazed disbelief, and, not only did he have a trickle of blood running down from his nose, but his right eye was swollen shut. Iruka, meanwhile, was waving a hand in front of the boy's face from left to right, attempting to coax some sort of responses out of him. He then clicked his fingers several times, and upon receiving zero life signs in that manner, Sasuke widened her eyes. He knocked the mud out on his feet, by one punch. Her head snapped towards Naruto, who was looking away and scratched his head sheepishly. When and how the hell can the dobi do that? Well, I just remember that I have something to do, so see you later guys. With that, Naruto was gone. Iruka blinked in surprise, then snapped out of his reverie and grabbed his chin. So, Naruto wasn't dancing around his opponent to draw attention to himself, he was trying to wind him up and tire him out. After getting Kiba to chase him around and burn up his endurance, he then hit him when he was weakened and too exhausted to react in time to counter. He was biding time, fighting smart and moving evasively, waiting for the right moment to strike. He deduced. Everyone gaped, including the Uchiha heiress. A simple but effective tactic. Making the opponent burn their energy, then fighting back once they were tired. No one could resist when your strength weakened so much, and a few effective counters would end the match immediately. But Naruto just needed one punch. At that time, Kiba suddenly awoke from his dazed state of oblivion with a shout of terror. Students and teachers alike jumped back in shock when he stumbled out of his reverie, waving his hands in front of him like he was trying to ward off flies or punches before stopping altogether. Panting and looking around at the bewildered faces surrounding him in paranoia, Kiba gulped deeply and asked the question that pretty much had everybody scratching their heads. What just happened? He stuttered. Shikamaru just stared at him. That's kind of what we'd like to know, Kiba. The rest of class crowded around him and started to talk about what was wrong with Kiba. For Sasuke, She didn't care for the crowd or about what they were debating. Instead, she just looked at the direction the blonde boy had just went some minutes ago. Lots of questions were in her head about Naruto's skills. Uchiha Sasuke was one frustrated girl. Why, you may ask? Because her Oni-chan had promised her that she would help her with her training with kunai, shuriken and fire-style techniques, but she had gotten a mission at the last moment, making her unable to help her, something that pissed her off to no end. Anime and manga. Don't misunderstand. Sasuke knew that her sister had a lot of responsibilities as a member of Anbu, but still this has been the third time she had cancelled their training, so it was normal for her to feel frustrated as this. It was because of that reason that you could find the young Uchiha walking toward a training ground in which she could practice alone on a Sunday, a scowl present on her face. Of course she could have gone to any of the training ground that her clan had, but today she really just wanted to burn something a little bit, and she decided that it was better to do it alone where no one would watch her unleashing her fury. So it was with that mentality that she went to a training ground which she knew was empty almost all the time since no one used it. So it was really surprising to the young black-haired girl when she actually found someone in this place, doing what it looked like taijutsu training. It only took a moment for Sasuke to figure out who was the one in the training ground. After all, that hair color and spiky style could only belong to one person in her opinion. Since when has the Dobi trained in this place? Though Sasuke, whose curiosity towards Naruto's training was going as high as it can be, her first thought was of just leaving and finding another training ground, but then an idea came to her mind. This was the perfect opportunity to not only get some info on the blonde, as lots of things about him bothered her since his match in the academy. In addition, it could also be a good practice at staying silent and gather information, something that her sister had told her it was important for an Anbu. So with that in mind, the young Uchiha got herself into a tree that was inside the training ground, but far enough that in her opinion the blonde would not notice her, and with her eyes focused on said boy she just watched. She watched as the blonde did some moves of a fighting style she had never seen in her life just before start practicing throwing kunai and shuriken at the bark of a tree, and the young Uchiha found herself actually a little impressed by the skills the blonde had with those weapons. Of course he was not at the level of her Oni-chan in her opinion, but he was definitely better than the majority of the other student at the academy. That thought brought a frown to Sasuke's face. After all, she could remember his ability with kunai and shuriken were not really great in the academy's tests, so how is it that now he was so good at it when in the last shuriken lesson, which was a week ago, he just managed to nail half of the shuriken at the training dummy? Sasuke found her curiosity towards the blonde boy increasing with every minute. Don't be so mean. It's still quite good, no wonder that she is one of the best in my class. Naruto whispered, still pretending not to notice her presence. It was after a few minutes of practicing with the normal ninja tools that Naruto went to the middle of the training ground and started meditating, something that confused Sasuke a lot. After all, she knew about the art of meditation, but she didn't know that someone of her age already knew how to do it. Alright, you can come out now, Sasuke-san. Those words with a mischievous voice made the young Uchiha turn around just to see that the boy was still in the middle of the training ground, although his eyes were open and they were looking right at the spot in which she was hiding mischievously, making Sasuke's eyes open wide in surprise. After all, she had hidden herself perfectly, so how did the Dobi find her? The young Uchiha girl had two options at that point. She could both run away and act like this never happened, or she could confront him and see if she could get any information. It took less of a second for her to decide. Naruto had his gaze completely focused on the young girl since the moment she stepped down from the tree until she got just in front of him. Her arms were crossed over her chest and a scowl was still present on her face. Naruto felt nervous. What did he do? Something bad? So, what do you need, Sasuke-san? He asked as his eyes looking directly at Sasuke's with an innocent gaze, something that annoyed Sasuke a little bit. What were you doing? She totally ignored Naruto's question completely, something that just made Naruto's brow to rise a little bit in interest before answering. Well, I'm training, he answered. And since when were you so good at throwing things? Sasuke asked a little forcefully, wanted to get to the bottom of this fast. Oh, if you want to train, I will leave now and find the other place. Naruto said cheerfully, totally ignoring her question. This annoyed Sasuke. She wanted to know exactly how strong was this guy since apparently the skills he showed in the academy were fake. After all, no one gets that good in just a week, so she got to the conclusion that, for some reason, this guy was hiding his real skills, but why though? Sasuke was going to find out though, and after a few seconds she thought of a way to see if her theory was true. Fight me, Sasuke said with a glare directed at Naruto. Quote. Yes. Naruto replied confusedly. I just say once more and only one. Fight me, she growled, intensifying her death glare. Naruto swallowed nervously. So scary, he thought. Just fight her, Kit, the Nine Tails said with an evil smirk. If she want, show her your skills and teach her who is boss. Even you furball. Naruto really wanted to smack his hand on his forehead. He then turned to Sasuke. I suppose I don't have a choice, right? He asked and Sasuke nodded firmly. The blonde just could sigh. All right, the goggled boy answered, getting a surprised expression from the Uchiha, before it turned into a little smirk with obvious confidence in her eyes. After all, even if she thought that Naruto was stronger than what he showed in the academy, there was still no way he was stronger than her, and after she beaten him she could ask all the questions she wanted. No jutsu or weapons, just taijutsu, understood? Naruto confirmed, getting a nod of acceptance from Sasuke, who was now standing a little far away from Naruto and had already entered in her clan fighting style, which if Naruto remembered right was called the Interceptor Fist, that was focused around predicting and countering your opponent's movements thanks to the Uchiha's bloodline, the Sharingan. But, if Naruto was right, Sasuke had not awakened her Sharingan yet, which meant her fighting style would be incompleted. The blonde analyzed the situation carefully. Compared to Kiba, Sasuke was really far better than, she was a girl though. General reference. In that case, Hajime. Naruto said just before entering in his own taijutsu style, one that was centered in speed and precision. This style was one of the many that he learned from scrolls which he borrowed, and it was used for dodging and evading attacks and hitting your enemy just at the right time, which combined with Naruto's natural speed. Naruto also decided to mess with Sasuke a little bit tough, as a form of payback for spying on him, even though he knew she was here from the beginning. So he just stayed there, knowing that Sasuke would not attack first since that was not the Uchiha's fighting style. After a few minutes of nothing but staring, plus Naruto's sly grin on his whiskered face, which got Sasuke pretty mad. The Uchiha girl decided to just attack herself in the stupid Dobi who was not going to move, so she ran at him with what Naruto guessed was probably Genin-like speed. Wow, she is surely stronger than Kiba. No, not only him but most of all students in academy. Naruto thought admittedly. Sasuke was still moving slow, so when she finally reached him and aimed a right fist at his face, Naruto easily evaded it by sidestepping to the left, but she retaliated with a roundhouse kick aimed once again to his head, which he dodged by moving backwards faster than the kick. This got a growl from Sasuke, who tried her luck again with another punch, only this time after dodging Naruto grabbed Sasuke's wrist with enough strength that the Uchiha girl could not get free. So she went for another fist, but he grabbed her other wrist too, and before she could even do anything she just pushed away from him and then he widened the distance between them a little by jumping backwards. This continued for a little more than 10 minutes, in which Sasuke would try to hit Naruto and the young blonde would just either dodge or block without attacking, not even once even though he had more than one opportunity for it, which was making Sasuke more angrier at every second. After 15 minutes of sparring, Naruto decided to put an end to it, so when the next punch from Sasuke came he once again grabbed her wrist and twisted her arm in her back too fast for her to see, then he used his legs and pushed Sasuke, making her fall face first into the ground. Do you yield, Harem? Naruto asked mischievously, twisting Sasuke's arm a little more to prove her that this little fight was more than over. Sasuke murmured something under her breath which Naruto didn't hear really well. Was that? He asked. I said that a yield, now get off me you baka. Sasuke yelled, more than angry for being bested so easily by someone of her age. Said someone accepted that and released Sasuke from his grip before standing and offering the young girl a hand to help her, which she just slapped away before actually storming out of the training ground with a heavy scowl on her face and if Naruto heard her write her last words before leaving sounded like, "This is not over." Naruto had a confused expression in his face all time though, his confusion getting to his mouth in a single comment. Was it something I said? Sasuke walked into her home and furiously opened the door. She still couldn't pass her loss away from her head. Since attending the Shinobi Academy, this was the first loss when she sparred with someone her own age. Oh, you're back, little moon. Looking up, Sasuke was surprised to see her sister, Uchiha Izumi. Oni-chan, what are you doing in home? I think you got your mission, she asked, removing her shoes and placing them by the door. Something happened so another team took our team's mission, Imouto-chan. Izumi answered, watching her every move. Look like you're still mad because I didn't help you with your training. Sasuke shook her head. No Oni-chan, I know how important your missions. I'm not mad at you. She said quietly. I'm pissed off a little at first though. I see. So why do you look like someone bite you when you enter the room? Izumi asked, still observing her little sister. Hearing that, Sasuke narrowed her eyes and ground her teeth. She wanted to forget it but her sister just unintentionally reminded her of the reason for her bad mood, but she couldn't lash out her because Izumi didn't know about it after all and Sasuke didn't want her to know too. It was a shame for Sasuke because she lost a spar with a dead last in the academy. What would her sister think? And her father would disappointed in her as he was the clan head of Uchiha clan. Nothing, Oni-chan. Sasuke replied harshly. Izumi frowned as she saw Sasuke's expression. She knew her little sister. She was ignorant and a little cold in the academy. She even didn't have any friends in there and Izumi was really worried about her sister keeping herself very private. Sasuke would graduate after she completed her academy time and started her shinobi's life. She would be put in a team with other two and their junin. They needed to learn to work together and trust each other. However, Sasuke in home was a sweet girl, always listened to Izumi and her parent. Especially, Sasuke was very close to Izumi as she always shared to her what happened in the Shinobi Academy. Imouto-chan, I can say that you're irritated something and I can't help if you don't talk to me. Izumi said softly. She really wanted to know what or who made Sasuke behave no like herself every day. I want to know too, Sasuke-chan. Her mother said, stepping down the hall. You aren't usually in bad mood like that, unless Izumi-chan is busy and can't help you. Sasuke groaned because she knew that they wouldn't end this conversation easily, but the youngest Uchiha thought it wasn't really a problem if she told them. Her mother, Uchiha Makoto, was gentle and understanding while Izumi still helped Sasuke with her training when she didn't get missions. If she needed someone to talk about her problems, she would surely find her mother and sister first. Not really a problem, Sasuke said. It's just that I lost a spar with a classmate and I feel frustrated. Izumi raised her eyebrow then she smiled slightly. I know you're a little stronger than most of all students in the academy and this is your first defeat, little moon. No wonder you will feel a little uneasy, but it's normal if you lose a spar. By the way, your defeat will point out your weaknesses and shortcomings, from there you can continue training and improve yourself. She explained. Sasuke sighed then she replied with her innocent smile, yes, Oni-chan. Izumi felt satisfied as she saw her Imouto get her cheerfulness, she rubbed her head. However, Makoto placed her hands on her hips and huffed. But who can manage to beat my baby in a spar? She demanded. The Uchiha girl pouted. He's supposed to be the dead last in my class, he's usually late and even skips classes. She was going to tell that he didn't pay attention for class, but she herself did the same thing sometimes. Sasuke also didn't want her mother to know because she knew Makoto wouldn't appreciate it. How could a dead last defeat you as you're one of the top student? Makoto asked with a slight frown. I don't know Okawa-san. I fought my best and used all taijutsu skills Oni-chan taught me, but you still couldn't get that Uzumaki even one blow. Sasuke huffed and crossed her arms. Makoto suddenly opened her eyes. Wait a minute. You just said his name is what? It's Uzumaki who defeated me. His full name is Uzumaki Naruto. Sasuke answered furiously. She still couldn't easily swallow her loss. The two looked at her in shock, the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed beast. Izumi mumbled, trying not to let Sasuke hear it. For Makoto, she was trying to get her emotions under control. That name, especially his surname, her mind thought about a certain red-hair woman and blonde-hair man. It is impossible. Hiruzen said that the child died with them. No way he would lie clan heads about something big like that. Makoto thought, feeling worry grip her. She tried to make myself believe it was just a coincidence, that boy just might happen to have the same surname with her best friend. Anime and manga. But what if that's not true? What if he's really? Makoto gripped her skirt. She just snapped out of her thoughts as Izumi spoke. Ka-chan. The girl was looking at her with a worried frown. What's wrong? I'm fine. Makoto smiled at her oldest daughter. She then turned to Sasuke. Sasuke-chan, when you meet him next time, invite him to our home. Sasuke and Izumi stared at their mother. Why did she suddenly want to invite that boy to their home? Oh, don't look at me like that. I just want to know who is the one making my baby girl pay attention to him. Makoto said with a giggle. The little raven-haired girl flushed. I don't pay my attention to him, Ka-chan. He's just a doby and an annoying idiot who just causes everyone troubles. She hissed. Oh my, you're cute now, Sasuke-chan. Her mother were still snickering at her. Che. Sasuke glared and pushed past them to go to her room. How dare they tease her about that? No way she had anything to do with that doby, and if she even had, it would be a revenge for him humiliating her. Izumi shook her head with a sigh. She then looked at Makoto. Ka-chan, are you sure? She asked. Do you really want to meet that boy? Why not? I'm sure like to meet him. She smiled. This is the first time Sasuke-chan sets her eyes on someone, especially that's a boy. I'm sure he's really interesting. Izumi didn't tell anything to protest as she totally agreed with the Uchiha mistress's reason. Even she herself was interested in Uzumaki Naruto. Except his Jinchuriki status, Izumi didn't know about him so much, maybe a troublemaker after pranks he did and made it hard on villagers or even Anbu teams. He pranked her team a few times and she still remembered how hard she found that boy, even lost track of him sometimes. She wondered many times how he could do that as he was just a little boy. She really wanted to meet and talk to him, but she didn't know how to start. Now he appeared again and managed to catch her little sister's attention, which most of all couldn't do except her family. She was more curious about him now. I suppose this is my chance to find out him more. The prodigy of Uchiha clan, Uchiha Izumi, thought with a smirk. After sparring with Sasuke, Naruto had his dinner in Ichiraku Ramen and then made his way deep into the library. He thought about the Uchiha girl and her behave. At first, she watched him training, and when she was found out, she irritated and demanded a spar. When he satisfied it, she looked like want to skin him alive. Man, girls were complicated. It's not really difficult to understand. You're just simply very dense. Kurama said in his mindscape. TCH, furball. Naruto grumbled. Once the blonde reached the library, he saw someone. Ayumi, the librarian, was an okay person in Naruto's opinion. She would smile at him, not the fake ones, and allow him to borrow a few books or scrolls. She even had helped him read the difficult words when he could just read some simple words at first. While Naruto wasn't usually taught much in the academy because the vast majority of teachers didn't like him, Ayumi taught most of all. even some simple shinobi skills because she was a retired kunoichi. Sometimes, Naruto heard the librarian mumbled, "Just like Minato," under her breath. He was puzzled. What did she mean? Besides, Minato was the name of Yondaime Hokage, right? Good afternoon, Ayumi-san. Oh hello, Naruto-kun, today you come to find more books. She smiled softly and Naruto nodded. Yeah, and some scrolls. Well, feel free to check and find what you need. The librarian said kindly. You can try going upstairs, maybe you will find something new. Thank you, Ayumi-san. He beamed at her, then walking up the stairs. He reached the second floor, and Naruto was amazed at how different it was to the previous one. The room was filled with sections that looked like cubicles, with wooden signs attached to the top of each threshold with string. There were more signs than Naruto could count, however, some sections seemed to be much larger than others. In the center of the room was a maze of hip-high bookshelves and desks, with many shinobi studying and reading at the heart of the library. The maze seemed to be circular in shape like a whirlpool, with a librarian's small counter in the shape of a triangle at opposite end to the entrance of the maze. It was upon further inspection that Naruto realized that it was the symbol of Konoha itself. Naruto looked at it for a while, feeling nothing strange, so he approached to the largest cubicle. Anime and manga. The library building itself was about 100 meters in length and 30 meters in width, with the towers being equally spaced out on the top. As such, the section that Naruto entered was roughly 25 meters by 10 meters. And yet, despite its size, it was practically barren, Naruto noticed as he went inside. Inside the room was something similar to what Naruto had seen earlier. It was something more akin to a counter, however, which towered above Naruto's head. Dotted around the counter were high stools, although they were not equally spaced out like the previous maze of desks. Upon closer inspection, on the inside of the circle in what Naruto assumed was empty space were more counters, but they were evidently not meant to be used for work. Each of these counters seemed to have about 10 centimeters between them, and the closer the counter was to the center, the closer it was to the floor. Like a whirlpool in what felt to Naruto like the rest of the room. The first thing Naruto actually noticed was the dust. Judging by the thickness of the layer that resided on the counters and books, this room was barely used, with 1 or 2 books frequently taken out to be studied. Fuinjutsu, for all intents and purposes, was a lost art. After the destruction of Uzushiogakure, the art disappeared to the bookshelves. In fact, many books that were saved from the fallen village were moved into this very room, to be lost to time. With no proper masters left to showcase the amazing potential of the art, many ninjas moved to flashy ninjutsu and dangerous genjutsu. Brushing away the dust from the counter, after heaving his way onto one of the stools, Naruto noticed someone had engraved something into the wood. Squinting his eyes to read the worn handwriting, Naruto scoffed at the idea of someone disrespecting the ancient building. However, a small part of him found it amusing it had lasted this long and that it slipped under the librarians' noses. Kushina was here, you know. Naruto shook his head with a smile, wondering how bored that person must have been to write something into this old table. Why's this place so dusty anyway? Naruto wondered, almost sneezing due to the dusty air in the room. It's understandable as no one ever comes in here for a long time. Kurama said. Are you sure you want to learn higher techniques, Kit? Don't you see it's still too early for you? Of course I want to learn them. Naruto said with a snicker, a fox-like smile making its way onto his face. I'm gonna come here every day. By the way, no one is here, it means I can have all the books to myself, I won't worry that someone find out and interfere me. He grumbled when he remembered teachers in his academy usually did everything to sabotage him, or more simple, they didn't teach him anything or teach falsehoods. Luckily, he had Kurama and the librarian help him. Well, it'll take you a while, the fox pointed out, gesturing to the hundreds of books and scrolls around the room. I know, Naruto said, bouncing in his chair now, causing small amounts of dust to fly into the air, but it would be no fun otherwise. Jutsu. Jutsu? What kind of jutsu? Naruto murmured to himself at his desk as he bit at the tip of the spoon he was holding. He gritted his teeth together in frustration when his mind drew up the same list of problems over and over again. Man, how can picking a jutsu to learn be so hard? Did Oji-san and everybody else have the same problem, or is it just me? Coming back from the library with some books and scrolls, Naruto had been doing everything in his power to come up with a sort of fail-safe project that he read in a book and decided to try it. Sure, the research and listings were easy. The problem now was deciding what kind of jutsu was best suited for him. With all of his time at the beginning and ends of each day spent either training or brainstorming, this meant he had very little free period for anything else. After a particularly exhausting Saturday, Naruto had decided to break away from his exercises and assignments to work on one of his other personal projects to clear his head. He was currently trying to perfect the formula for his new firework pellet, an explosive with a colorful kick to it that didn't just leave damage but also emitted blinding flashes and sparklers that did even more damage. Once it was completed, Naruto knew it was going to be sweet once he tried it out on something, or someone. With his goggles pulled down over his eyes, the Jinchuriki pulled the spoon out of his mouth and went back to work. I'll figure out the name of the jutsu later. All I want is for it to be a big one, the blonde boy said excitedly, using his utensil to measure the amount of powders he had. With the canister for the self-propelled explosive laid out on the table of his living room, it almost looked like he was running some sort of shady drug experiment since he had all these science gimmicks lying all over the place. It was almost comical how focused he was on the thing. It was good to know that he had a substantial amount of experience in this area and knew exactly what he needed to do, otherwise he'd be more concerned for his own safety than he was. It was a big bomb after all. Naruto continued his rampant of audible thoughts while mixing the deadly tail between the vials. I want something flashy. Not like a blazing fireball jutsu. Naruto shook his head while tapping the contents of the tube he was holding up in front of him. It's too much burning and not enough bang. I want a jutsu that can blow people away. Something that can make people's hair stand on end. But what? His ideal jutsu had to have charisma and needed to be eye-catching, as well as simple enough for him to use, sort of like an explosive tag. Shrugging his shoulders thoughtfully, Naruto reached out and randomly grabbed a flask of flash powder nearby. Without measuring it, he gently poured the contents into the vial in his other hand. It was about time for the final mix. Plop, sizzle, boom. God damn it, I hate fuinjutsu. The Kyuubi roared out. The entire apartment complex was rocked by a massive explosion. Every single window of Naruto's block was blown out in a horrible flash of blinding light, scattering glass and debris all across the neighborhood. Nearby villagers out and about turned towards the building in shock, many giving out startled yelps at the sight of the discharge. Seconds later, once all the fire and embers had passed, black smoke began pouring out of every opening in the building. What was that? A shopkeeper asked while poking his head out of his stand at the side of the road. His most recent customer, an old woman sporting a hunch and a shawl, also looked towards the building in surprise. Oh my, is it New Year's already? She murmured curiously. It made sense as firework sparks were now starting to shoot out the shattered panes and were bursting into colorful flowers above the streets. It was a glorious sight to behold indeed. Inside the disaster zone though, it was a completely different story. With fixtures blown out of place, walls and furniture shredded, and every surface area within sight of the center charred a smoking coal black, the once clean experiment had transformed into a real, god-awful mess. And of course, sitting in the very heart of the smoldering lounge room, a very surprised-looking Naruto sat staring at his now disintegrated workspace. His entire front burned black with his back remaining completely untouched, leaving a hilarious outline of him in the soot on the wall behind him. The blonde blinked several times to bring himself back into consciousness. His owlish expression could clearly be seen through his cracked goggles. The startled Naruto coughed out a plume of smoke. Something tells me that that was the wrong ingredient. He then glanced at nearby wall clock and saw the time was 4:59. Naruto opened his eyes widely. Damn it. I forgot I had appointment with Sasuke. She will me if I'm late. Naruto stood up and rushed to the bathroom. After bathing and cleaning all the mess in his room, he immediately got the urgent appointment. Uzumaki Naruto is a confident person. He always thought he could do anything as long as he didn't give up. Do I can make it? He thought as he ran as fast as his legs could carry him. That reminds me, why does Sasuke's mother want to meet me? Naruto recalled when Sasuke had approached to him, which she and even no one in his class hadn't ever done before, and surprisingly, she said that her mother invited him to dinner at the Uchiha compound. Sasuke's mother, so it means that she was the wife of the Uchiha clan head, Uchiha Makoto. The Uchiha mistress wanted to meet him, who was nothing more but an orphan and even an outcast in the village. Maybe they're planning to turn me and you into a weapon for them. Kurama growled furiously. Those power-hungry Uchihas never give up any chance for them increasing more power and authorities. Naruto just sighed. He was really worried about his friend. Kurama, I understand your anger, but it doesn't mean every Uchiha are bad. By the way, the Konoha military police force of the Uchiha clan guard the security of the village. Yeah, Kurama had talked to Naruto what happened in the night of the Kyuubi attack. Not everything, of course. Naruto realized that as he felt his hesitance in some details, but Naruto didn't want to make it more difficult, so he just passed it away. Never in his life Naruto thought that the Kyuubi attack was happened by an Uchiha, or more precisely, a rogue Uchiha, maybe a female, called herself the legendary Uchiha Madoka. She had controlled the fox and caused a massive bloodbath 7 years ago. No wonder Kurama had a negative opinion of Uchihas. The Kyuubi simply responded in an annoyed tone, "Don't be take it carelessly, kid. Once you let your guard down, they will turn on and backstab you. Everything Uchiha care for is getting power as much as possible, and they want every demands to be satisfied or will do everything to get it." His eyes then looked thoughtful. The costly lesson of Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madoka is strong evidence. Naruto face faulted at that response, but he just shook his head and didn't say anything. The ancient fox was so stubborn that he could listen to him, but who could blame him? No one liked being controlled and then captured in the seal. It was not wrong that Kurama hold a grudge against the legendary Uchiha Madoka and the rogue Uchiha who caused the Kyuubi attack, but Naruto wasn't a fan of labels. He could see that Uchiha Sasuke was nothing like a bad person. She wasn't very sociable though, and her sister, Uchiha Izumi or Anbu Captain Weasel, who helped him many times as he was attacked by villagers. Naruto just knew her name from Hokage Gigi, he had never met her yet. Anyway, you better run quickly or you will be late for the date with Uchiha Brat. Kurama said with a smirk. You don't need to tell me, furball. Where is the dead last? In a park near the Uchiha compound, Sasuke was leaning against a tree with an annoyed expression. It was past her date time, but a certain idiot hadn't appeared yet and she started feeling impatient. Have patience, Imouto-chan. Maybe he's busy something, and aren't you a bit early? I just didn't want to make him wait in case he got here soon. Sasuke exclaimed with a reddened face. By the way, why do you want to meet him, Oni-chan? Yup. The other one was Izumi. After she knew Sasuke had the appointment with Uzumaki Naruto for the dinner invitation, Izumi asked for going with her. Sasuke had no problem with that, but she wondered why her sister followed her. It's not often Izumi paid attention to any males except her father and maybe some men in her Anbu team. Even her mother was excited about this, but for some reason, she felt that her mother didn't simply want to meet him because he was her friend. She didn't miss her expression when she said his name. Yo Sasuke. Sorry I'm late. A tick mark appeared on Sasuke's head when she heard the voice. He finally came. You're late, you idiot. She hissed at him. Naruto chuckled, scratching the back of his head. Sorry, a black cat crossed my path so I had to go the long way. He said in an apologetic voice. Izumi's sweat dropped with his excuse. She felt something very familiar in the excuse, and a certain silver-haired Anbu appeared in her head. Sasuke gritted her teeth and clenched her fists. He used a ridiculous excuse for covering his lateness. It was really hard to resist her desire to beat Naruto to a pulp, but she had to. She couldn't do anything at this time, not as her sister was here and the youngest Uchiha didn't want to make a fool of her, so all what she did. Liar. She yelled with her finger still pointed accusingly at him, but Naruto just smiled back her idiotically, which just got her angrier. At present, Naruto just noticed the presence of someone but Sasuke and him. He turned and laid eyes on the girl who was about 4 or 5 years older him and Sasuke. Taking a good look at her, Naruto totally saw her look pretty much like the youngest Uchiha, so this was Uchiha Izumi, the female prodigy of the Uchiha clan and Sasuke's older sister. However, the blonde decided to pretend not to know. Hi. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. It wasn't really difficult to realize the Anbu Weasel's chakra from her, but he didn't think she would like to know that her identity was found out by a 7-year-old child. Izumi was watching it all with a small, amused smile. Hello, Naruto-kun. She greeted politely and Naruto nodded warily. His brain ceased functioning as he watched the Uchiha prodigy. She had silky smooth raven hair that were tied in a black ribbon in a high ponytail and came about mid-waist length on her back. She was wearing a black shirt with the Uchiha symbol on the back and an Anbu pant. She had pale white smooth skin that shone in the sunlight. Guess Sasuke wasn't the only one with the good looks. He thought with a small smile. Nice to meet you, Naruto-kun. Izumi could see the boy was quite comfortable. She waited for a little shy or even tense as he was an orphan and didn't usually contact to many people. Really an interesting boy. Nice to meet you too. He replied cheerfully. Sasuke said you're in Anbu Black Ops. He said with excitement. Yes. Izumi nodded. I joined in not long ago. And Nei-chan is just 12. Sasuke said, feeling proud of this fact. I'm going to grow up to be just like her. She told Naruto with a smile and Naruto answered it with his giggle. Take your time at the academy, little moon, graduating faster is not really necessary. Izumi rubbed her sister's head. Nei-chan. The said Uchiha pouted cutely. Alright, Okawa-chan and Otou-sama are in home, we shouldn't keep them waiting. The elder Uchiha said and held her sister's hand. Come on, Naruto-kun. Our mother really wants to meet you. Naruto and the Uchiha sisters walked down the street. All three didn't miss glares or mumbles aiming at the only boy of the trio. Naruto sighed and then just tried to ignore them. It hurt him so much, but he knew that nothing he could do to change their opinions on him, at least now. For the Uchiha duo, Sasuke was confusing, wondering why villagers paid attention to them so much, but she didn't tell anything. Izumi, however, fully knew the reason and couldn't stop feeling pity for the blonde. She knew that Jinchuriki had never been treated well by their village, if not be isolated completely. She still remembered how many times her team saved him from mobs and stupid civilians' wrath. Izumi frowned as she recalled the barely breathing child in her arms. If it weren't for his tenant, Naruto couldn't survive until now. When they walked through the gates of the compound, Naruto whistled at the size. Wow, so big. Of course. Sasuke said proudly and Izumi just smiled softly. The eldest Uchiha led them down the streets of the compound, past the curious members of his clan who wondered who the blonde boy was. Some realized him but they said nothing, just stared at him. He was getting odd looks because he was walking with the clan head's 2 daughters. He must have been important if Izumi even was leading him. And in a way, he was. Naruto was amazed at the size of the Uchiha clan head's house. It was huge. It was probably the size of a mini Shiro with red-tiled roofing and fancy wooden pillars. Then there was this huge garden off to the side of it that just took his breath away. They stood before the wooden gates and painted walls of a relatively modest home. The green roof tiles contrasted brilliantly against the red leaves of the maple trees. The quaint 2-story house was well maintained, beautiful in its elegance and welcoming in its simplicity. The soft white paint of the wall surrounding the home blended smoothly with the gray stone foundation underneath. When inside, he followed his lead and left her shoes by the door. He followed Sasuke and Izumi into the large kitchen to see a woman who looked a lot like Sasuke. Naruto was sure that the woman was Uchiha sister's mom. Her black eyes darted from face to face, only to settle on his. It was there, just for a split second, but he could see the shock in her eyes. Unlike the regular looks that Naruto'd received, her eyes held none of the hate. Why did she had that expression? Did they meet in somewhere? Long, dark blue hair reached the middle of her back. Spiky bangs formed her pale, heart-shaped face. She wore a dull yellow apron over a dark purple blouse and plum-colored skirt. Even though she looked the part of a traditional housewife, Naruto had learned to look underneath the underneath. From every measured step she took to the ephemeral grace of every movement. This woman was a tried and true kunoichi. Hello. I'm Uchiha Makoto, Sasuke's mother. The woman smiled. Grinning like a loon but recalling his etiquette lessons from Hokage Jiji and Ayumi the librarian, he gave a small bow. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Nice to meet you Uchiha-sama. Sasuke and Izumi's eyes went wide. Apparently, they didn't know that he could be respectful as they just saw him as an hyperactive idiot and the troublemaker every day. Not like they blamed him because he was an orphan after all. No Sama please. You can call me Makoto and I'll call you Naruto. The woman, Uchiha Makoto, smiled once more. Will you be joining us for dinner, Naruto-kun? She smiled at him, almost motherly in the warmth she radiated. Ducking his head down and nodding shyly, he responded. If you will have me, Makoto-san. Naruto winced a little. He didn't like the idea of calling the Uchiha mistress by her name all that much as he just met her. I guess that will have to do for now. Makoto told the boy as she turned back to the food she was preparing. Dinner will be done within the hour. You can go outside, but keep an ear out. Hi, Ka-chan. Sasuke dragged Naruto out of the room and down the long hall. Izumi followed after them. Izumi. The three youngsters turned their heads in the direction of the voice. The sisters easily recognized the voice as that of their fathers while Naruto took in the appearance of the newcomer. Long brown hair framed his face, parted down the middle and held together in a low ponytail. Wearing a simple blue kimono shirt tied shut with a simple purple cloth belt. A pair of gray pants that reached mid-shin and purple shinobi sandals completed the look. The man had a severe expression on his face, only deepened by his strong square jaw and the two creases beneath his jet black eyes. Because Sasuke looked like the Uchiha mistress, Naruto knew where Izumi got her features from. Otu-sama. Izumi and Sasuke bowed at the waist, a sign of deference and great respect for their father and clan head. The man, Uchiha Fugaku, nodded and looking at them with a emotionless expression. Naruto frowned. He always looked like that in front of even members in his family. But it didn't really make him surprise. Naruto heard about the Uchiha clan head so much and he thought that this man really had a big problem. He was a slave driver and set upon making Uchiha Izumi one of the strongest in the Uchiha clan before she even became Junin. Naruto felt like the man was a bit insane, and messed up in his head. Izumi was just 6 when she graduated. What the hell was the man thinking? Why wouldn't he let her enjoy her childhood? Perhaps Fugaku just had the usual Uchiha complex, where he thought of him as above everyone else. Who knows? Luckily, he didn't the same thing with Sasuke, at least now he thought. Kurama snorted, a pity excuse of the father. It's obvious that he just used his daughter for this pity clan's getting power. He even are worse than Madoka. He said in disgusting tone. Naruto didn't tell but he mentally agreed with the fox. Fugaku turned to look Naruto. He narrowed his eyes in seconds before the emotionlessness returning again. It didn't stop the blonde from assuming the worst. Talking to Makoto that I'm not going to dinner. With that, Fugaku left without even looking back the boy. Naruto suppose he was nothing in his eyes but he felt more comfortable than Kami. Talk about high-strung tension. And that attitude, this was his daughter he was telling, does there need to be very cold like that? Naruto met some other clan heads and most of them was stern and authority, but no one had resting bitch face like Uchiha Fugaku. Not that he dared to say that in the man's presence. Alright, lunch is ready. Unlike Sasuke, who was practically bouncing in her seat with excitement over the mouthwatering homemade fare spread out across the table, Naruto waited patiently for Izumi to take her seat beside Makoto. Where is Fugaku? Makoto asked as she didn't see her husband. Otu-sama said that he wasn't going to dinner Okawa-san. Izumi replied. Naruto could notice her dissatisfaction with the absence of the Uchiha clan head. Makoto sighed tiredly. I see. She then picked up her own chopsticks alongside her daughters and Naruto did the same thing. Itadakimasu. The dinner was surprisingly peaceful. Sasuke, behaving like the average child, completely hated the idea of eating vegetables, pushing them aside on her plate. Naruto, on the other hand, ate his without complaint. How could he complain when they actually taste good? Comparing with leftover foods he had usually eaten when he had been in the orphanage, they were edible. Sasuke, eat your vegetables instead of pushing them to the side. That would be Makoto telling her to eat those veggies. For the 13th time. Naruto, eat your Finished. Naruto wish he had a camera. What he wouldn't give to capture the look of shock on Makoto's face when she saw his pickled daikon dish empty. HMPH. At least one of you likes my cooking enough to eat their veggies. That only prompted the youngest Uchiha to stick out her tongue at her mother and toss an annoying glare at him. Man, it was not like his fault as she didn't eat her vegetables. Caught between an apathetic Naruto and Sasuke was Izumi, happily eating her meal. Occasionally, she would pick out a morsel of food from the main serving plate and drop it on either his or Sasuke's bowl. It was such an older sister thing to do that he accepted every bite without complaint. Naruto-kun. Makoto's voice clearly cut through the silence. Naruto looked up. I heard about you from Sasuke. Thank you for taking care of her. I'm glad she has a friend in the academy. Okawa-san. Sasuke groaned and Naruto chuckled at that, which made the little Uchiha glared him. Don't laugh, you idiot. Don't think I forgave you for being late. She growled at him. Naruto raised his hand for defending. Ma, I'm so sorry. I was busy a little and my home is a long way from the park, so it took a while to get to you. This grabbed the attention of both Makoto and Izumi. Where do you live? Izumi asked. I live alone in a small apartment in the west of the village. The blonde said, with a point of sadness. I'm an orphan. My parents were shinobi and they died fighting the Kyuubi. I was in there after I was kicked out of the orphanage when I was 4. The silence that settled over the table was most uncomfortable. A quick look around him, the shock expression on Sasuke's face. Izumi narrowed her eyes and Makoto, he could say that she wasn't pleased or more precisely, she was furious. Her hand was holding the teacup so tightly that her knuckles were white and it looked like it might shatter any moment. What did he say anything to piss her off? Excuse me. The Uchiha mistress finally said, putting down her cup and rising elegantly, I have a meeting to attend to. And she strode out of the room. Sasuke and Izumi looked after her worriedly while Naruto was curious. I feel a bit bad for your old man Kit. The fox commented sheepishly. What do you mean Kurama? Why does she go to Jeej? I can only say that she wants the truth Kit. Unknown to them, Izumi stole a glance at the boy, wondering anything he had to do to her mother's attitude. 4 hours later. Where are all these paperwork coming from? The Sandaime Hokage groaned inwardly as he looked down at the 100th file he has had to read so far. The old man was happy that Konoha was getting a steadily increasing amount of missions, but the work was becoming overwhelming, his eyes were starting to water after such long hours of reading. Minato, the Hokage thought as he looked up at a picture of his predecessor, who looked so young in the frame. It's not like that's your fault, but the hole you leave is really large. I'm too old for this position and don't act with decisiveness to solve everything and protect this village and your son. The elderly Hokage would often look inside the academy classrooms to check on the progress of many young ninja, and Naruto would usually catch his eyes. Over the years, Hirazen's worry for the Uzumaki boy had become more and more. The village had despised him as much as possible. Maybe they didn't dare to do anything bad to him when he was there, but he knew there was always something after him aiming at the poor boy. Most of villagers persecuted him as a monster, the Kyuubi that had attacked and nearly destroyed Konoha. Excuse me, Hokage-sama, but Makoto-sama wished to see you. The voice of the receptionist that broke the Hokage out of his thoughts came. After clearing his throat, the old man replied, "Please ask her in." The large double doors parted and the familiar face of Uchiha Makoto appeared in front of the elderly leader. He had known the Uchiha matriarch since she was a little girl and Namikaze Minato's teammate. He had watched her grow into a powerful Uchiha Junin and transform into a loving mother of 2 daughters. Like many others in the village, Makoto was like Sarutobi's own child. With a smile on his face, Hiruzen nodded at the woman. "Hello Makoto-san, how can I help you today?" The Uchiha had a perplexed expression on her face as she looked down at the ground. "I need to ask you something, Hokage-sama." Hiruzen immediately noticed her strange behavior and nodded again. "Please take a seat." Makoto sighed and pulled out the chair for themselves before sitting down. "What do you need to ask me, Hokage-sama?" Makoto looked up into the Hokage's eyes and rested her hands on his desk. "I want to ask about Uzumaki Naruto." The Hokage became tensing once he heard the name from Makoto, but he quickly covered it up with his stoic expression. "What questions do you have about that boy?" he asked with a calm voice. "I want the truth about him Hokage-sama," she replied coldly. The Hokage had a million guesses, but he still played it like he didn't know. "Uzumaki Naruto's an orphan and the Jinchuriki of the 9 tails. He's in same class with your youngest daughter by chance. I can make sure that nothing bad will happen to Sasuke-chan if she contacts with him. Please don't play dumb with me Hokage-sama. You know exactly what I mean." Makoto said hotly. "Is Naruto there?" Makoto was cut off of her sentence as Hiruzen raised a finger to his lips while carrying an extremely serious expression. She watched as he weave a hand seal that resulted in a slight hum to go through the entire room. From what the Uchiha mistress knew, she assumed the Hokage activated a silencing seal in the room. Hiruzen released the sigh and looked directly at Makoto. "I did foreknow all of this. In fact, it's just a matter of time before you figures it out. Yeah, Naruto is the son of Minato-kun and Kushina-chan, but this is a SS-ranked secret and only a much selected few are privy to such knowledge." Makoto felt a little intimidating by the aura the Hokage was emitting, but held her ground. "He looks like mini-clone of Minato and has the same last name as Kushina," Makoto whispered as she leaned forward on the desk. "I've known both of them all my life, so I think we're capable of discovering such a secret by ourselves." She then looked at the Hokage, and it won't take long for other clan heads finding out Sandaime-san. She succeeded. "I know, and they came to meet me before you." Hiruzen sighed and closed his eyes for a few seconds. "It's the Ino-Shika Cho trio." The Ino-Shika Cho trio was very close to Minato, and Shikaku was a genius from the Nara clan. It was totally easy for him to realize something, and naturally, he would tell 2 clan heads of the Akamichi clan and Yamanaka clan. Makoto felt her anger grew as she glared a little at the old man. "Why didn't you tell us about him?" The woman hissed angrily. "I could have given him a home and a family. He could have grown up with people who really care for him. I understand how you feel. Believe me, not only you but Shikaku, Inoichi and Shuja willing to adopt the boy, and I really want to allow that, but it would have caused a lot of attention to be directed to him." Hiruzen stated seriously. "All what I can allow, you can get close to him, but make sure you don't tell him anything about Minato or Kushina." The Hokage leaned forward on his desk and stared at the Uchiha. "This is extremely important Makoto. You mustn't tell anybody about Naruto's parentage, not even Fugaku. This is all for Naruto's own protection. It has been 1 year since the first coming of Naruto with the Uchiha family. and just like every Sunday he found himself in the same spot, which was of course on top of a certain Uchiha princess. No, not like that. Ever since their first fight, Uchiha Sasuke made it a personal mission to challenge Naruto to a spar every Sunday at the same exact training ground. Naruto had considered changing place, but he didn't found any reason for it since those little spars were a good workout in Naruto's opinion, and even Kyuubi had said that it was a good opportunity for Naruto to train with someone else besides him, so the young blonde had accepted the spar every time Sasuke challenged him. And of course she had yet to win one. So it was not surprised that we can find Naruto, now 10 years old, on top of Sasuke's back, her arm once again twisted in her back and a frustrated expression in her cute face. "Do you yield?" Naruto asked, still a little of humor in his voice with a foxy grin. After all, this was his favorite way of ending the spars. It was also the way the Uchiha girl hated more. "Yes, you baka. Now get off me before I burn you." Sasuke threatened half-heartedly before releasing an annoyed sigh. The blonde boy was fast to comply, and just like the first time they spared, he offered his hand to help her get up, only this time she actually accepted with the smallest of smiles appearing on her lips. Naruto then sat in the ground and started meditating, which he found really relaxing after sparring. Meanwhile Sasuke just stood there, looking at Naruto before releasing a sigh and going to a tree in which she could rest under its shadows. Two of them just stayed there in a peaceful silence, but of course everything had to come to an end at some point. So, Makoto Obasan and Izumi Nichan argued with Fugaku-sama and elders in the Uchiha clan again. Naruto spoke out. Izumi was really nice to him as she taught him some useful skills and he unexpectedly called her Nichan. Izumi also didn't mind it. In fact, Naruto saw she was satisfied as he did that. Sasuke just sighed tiredly. "Yeah, and they are growing more intense every day. I can see how much Okawa-san is stressed after the meeting between members. Oni-chan is always very tired and I don't know anything. I'm not ready to join those meetings, at least that's what Okawa-san told me." Sasuke said firmly, her gaze once again in her blonde friend. Yes, friend. She never thought she would ever call this guy that, but after 1 year on sparring every Sunday and actually talking to him after that, she actually found he was not that bad of a guy, although it annoyed her that he acted like a kid and often teased her whenever he had a chance. She started liking his presence even more after that incident. What happened was actually simple. A year ago during their normal training routine, meaning Naruto beating her easily, she twisted her ankle really bad to the point she could not really move without feeling a lot of pain. So Naruto, being the gentleman he was, decided to actually carry her to her house like a freaking princess, which found protest from the young Uchiha who had a blush during the entire trip, but it wasn't like she could really do anything, so after a few minutes they both finally reached to her house. Naruto helped her to get inside, and when he asked about the other members of her family, she just told him that she was going to be alone for that day and that he should just leave. But of course he didn't. Saying that someone that's hurt should not be alone like this, so he decided to actually stay and take care of her, which got another blush and more protest from the young Uchiha, but Naruto would have none of that. So after treating her injury as best as he could, he actually cooked her lunch and dinner and stayed in the house until it was really late just to make sure that she didn't do anything stupid while injured. At the end of the day, Sasuke simply asked why was he doing all of this for her. He blinked for a while, then smiled softly, and his answer had made her brain stop for a whole minute just there. That's what friends are for, aren't they? And since that day, Sasuke actually found herself waiting for Sunday to spar and then speak to him. In the academy, she still seated herself beside him and sometimes talked to him, which indirectly made Naruto fanboys his enemy. They even ate lunch together every day. "Don't worry so much," Naruto said softly. "I believe everything will be fine. Makoto Obasan is very intelligent. She and Izumi Nichan will surely find the way to solve those problems." Quote. Hope so, Sasuke answered aimlessly. Looking at her expression, Naruto knew he should stop talking about this topic. This wasn't the first time he heard about quarrels in the Uchiha clan, Sasuke was 8, but she was still a part of the Uchiha clan, more or less affecting her. Anyways, you're making progress in your taijutsu. I think I should reward you something. Naruto said with a foxy grin. Sasuke couldn't help but to look away after hearing that, with a small blush on her face. Thank you. I couldn't do that if why you didn't help me, and why you don't need to give me anything. You helped me so much. She said, started to play with her hair nervously. Nah, I insist. In addition, I'm sure you will like this reward and it will help you so much in your ninja career in the future. What do you mean? Naruto smirked and his answer then made the Uchiha girl couldn't help but feeling surprised and a little excited. I will help you awake your Sharingan. The Hokage Tower. The Sandaime Hokage sat at his desk doing paperwork. Hiruzen was trying to find ways to keep himself awake by doing one of the more mundane aspects of being Hokage. He was, however, more focused on the door to his office. The man was currently waiting for a specific shinobi to arrive so that he could have a discussion with him. After the Sandaime finished a whole stack of paperwork, he heard a knock on the door. Enter. Hiruzen spoke up as he moved his paperwork to the side of his desk. The Sandaime Hokage watched as the door to his office opened. An Anbu with the weasel mask walked into the room, walked to the center of the room before bowing to the Hokage. You can take off your mask, Izumi, and have a seat. I have many things we need to discuss. Hiruzen said. Understood. The Anbu nodded. The young girl removed her mask, revealing onyx eyes and jet black hair. The Anbu operative, Uchiha Izumi, proceeded to sit down in a chair in front of Hiruzen's desk. How are you, Izumi? Do you have anything to report yourself? Hiruzen questioned. Izumi nodded. Yes, Hokage-sama. I just left the compound after the meeting between members in the Uchiha clan. My father and some elders really purposed to make a coup against you in Konoha. Hiruzen sighed. He should have known this. The Uchiha clan, ever since the Kyuubi attack, had been treated negatively by a good portion of the Konoha shinobi. They were under suspicion as possible instigators of the Fox's attack. Due to this discrimination and suspicion, the clan had started to resent Konoha and its ideals and were planning to act appropriately. Are all Uchiha clan's members in agreement? Hiruzen asked as he massaged his temples. Not really, Hokage-sama. My mother and some people in the clan argued strongly against the coup. The Uchiha girl said calmly. I see. Hiruzen contemplated. Makoto was Minato's teammate before and Kushina's best friend. I suppose she is influenced to some extent by them. Is there any more information you have heard? Izumi shook her head. The clan is being secretive about who they let know information, even amongst the conspirators. The Anbu operative paused in his speech for a few seconds before speaking again. I believe they are starting to suspect that I am leaking information of the coup. The Sandaime sighed in response again. Action was going to be needed soon. Alright, thank you for your information. He said in a stoic voice. Keep following and reporting me their activities personally and to no one else. Thankfully, Makoto-san is against this, so we still have the chance to stop a civil war. I also shall try and find a peaceful solution to this and hope Fugaku regains his senses and discuss it with the elders. He said seriously. Hi Hokage-sama, she said. He nodded and said, dismissed. Izumi disappeared from his office. Hiruzen let out a tired sigh as he gazed upon the village. He knew that the elders would make a fuss over it and ask for the execution of the whole Uchiha clan, especially Danzo, and fulfill some hidden agenda of his. He lit his pipe and blew out smoke. What will I have to do to this? So how did Izumi Nichan get her Sharingan? Sasuke shook her head. I just knew that Oni-chan got that after a mission and I heard that one of her teammate was in front of her. Now she achieved one of the highest levels of the Sharingan, which was previously thought to be impossible. She said in awe. So it's similar to what I know from Kurama. Naruto thought while still looking at his Uchiha friend. Sharingan is awakened by strong emotions from the user, typically negative ones, and Izumi Nichan's Sharingan is in the highest level, it means she get Mangekyo Sharingan. How could she get it to evolve? Whatever, I will find out later. Naruto created a clone. Okay. I can make these pretty durable, as long as it's a small number of them. A few hits won't get rid of it. Sasuke gave him a, what? Look. The blonde boy pointed to the clone. Kill me, he said in a command voice. Sasuke backpedaled. No. Naruto sighed. This would be difficult. Girl, it's a clone. Not the real me. Now he scoffed. I can't. The raven-haired girl glared at the ground and refused to look at him. Why not? It's only a clone, Harem. Besides, this'll help you when we actually have to do a mission and we have to. So I can't, my best friend. She yelled angrily. Come on, Sasuke. It's only a clone. I'm not going to die for real. If you don't buck up, I'll kick your friend or not. Sasuke still didn't do anything. Suppose I have to do it the hard way. I'm sorry, Sasuke. He charged to the young girl and attacked her, and Sasuke fought back to defend herself. Naruto threw a kunai into her. Sasuke caught that kunai and attacked him with ferocity without knowing why she did that. Naruto was pretty good at dodging, missing the swipes of the kunai and landing hits of his own. She still landed hits as well. Sasuke managed to get a good slice to his neck and watched as actual blood poured out of the wound. Sasuke widened her eyes. No. She watched as Naruto sunk to the ground. More blood coming from the wound. Naruto. His hair and face and shirt were drenched in blood. So much blood, and it was soaking his shirt. His hand was clutching his neck as he gasped for air. Sasuke dropped to her knees beside him and yelled, "What happened to you, Dobi? You always avoid it easily. Nice move, and very quick." The girl placed her hand over his as she tried to stop the blood flow. You idiot. Breath. No. Don't close your eyes. Please, Naruto. I'll be fine, Harem. Naruto mumbled as his blue eyes dulled in focus. Sasuke could feel her heart pounding. Her friend's eyes were closing and she could feel his pulse slowing. The blood kept coming, covering her pants as she pulled him closer and tried to stop it from coming out. Why was there so much blood? She began to hyperventilate. His eyes closed finally and his body went limp. Naruto. Naruto. No. 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 Her hands began to shake as tears came to her eyes. Naruto had no pulse. No pulse. No pulse. No pulse. No pulse. Ah. Sasuke's eyes burned and her head was aching. But she didn't care about that. She just accidentally her best friend. How could he do it? Why would he go through such a thing just to help her? Why? The tears overflowed and Sasuke hated himself. She was still so weak. Naruto was dead because she was weak. Because she wasn't like her older sister. It was all her fault. Naruto was dead. Dead. Sasuke gripped her head as she panicked. How could she do that to her best friend? She was no better than a monster. Sasuke. Now she was hearing his voice. Sasuke. The guilt of her actions crept over Sasuke. She was a murderer. She should be locked away. Uchiha Sasuke. What? She looked up to see Naruto standing there, like nothing was wrong. She looked down at the Naruto in her lap and gaped when it disappeared in a puff of smoke. How? The one you were arguing with was a clone as well. I was over there the whole time. Naruto pointed to the trees. Sasuke looked at her bloodied hands and the blood on the ground. She was shaking horribly and her tears were coming even faster. She didn't him. Naruto sighed. Look, I'm sorry that I had you believe that I was dead, but I wanted to test something. He was cut off when Sasuke wrapped her arms around him as tight as she could. Never do that to me. Ever again. You don't know how horrible that was. I thought I hated you, Naruto. Something like that can mess with your mind. I was horrified. I thought I hated my best friend. She hiccuped. The Uzumaki patted her back as she calmed down. I'm sorry. Why did you do it? She pulled away slightly, watching his eyes. A good reason, I promise. Naruto pulled something out of his jacket and opened it, holding it out to the Uchiha. Sasuke glanced at it. It was a mirror, and staring back at her was a pair of red eyes with two tomos. It was the Sharingan. She collapsed, taking the blonde boy with her. You did all that, just to see if I'd get the power? Naruto nodded. Sorry, Sasuke. I didn't think it would affect you that much. Naruto, you are my best and only friend. I'm not on pretty good terms with everyone from our class except you. To watch your only friend die right before you and know that you're the cause of it is horrible. It's the kind of trauma that can screw you up inside. Sasuke explained as her heart calmed down. I was terrified and I felt the deepest of hatred for myself because of it. Please, Naruto, never do that again, even if it's for a good reason. Naruto sighed. Okay. I'm really sorry. She sighed as they laid there. Just give me a few moments to get over this, I'm still shaking. They lay there for a few minutes as Sasuke finally relaxed. I think I'm good. That's a relief. Can I get up now? The Uchiha flushed, realizing that she'd been holding Naruto for the past several minutes. Yeah. She moved her arms and he sat up. How about you go home and rest? We have our class tomorrow. Naruto offered her a hand and Sasuke accepted. They both stood. I'm going back to my home now, so I'll see you tomorrow. I'm really sorry, Sasuke. She shook her head. It's okay. Thank you for helping me get the Sharingan. Just promise you won't do that again. Naruto raised a hand. I promise. If I break it, I'll never eat ramen again. She smirked. That idiot definitely keep that promise if he brought ramen into it. Okay. I'll see you tomorrow, Dobi. Sure thing, Haim. Sasuke watched as he ran off. That had to have been the worst day ever. The Uchiha compound. Izumi, upon entering her house in the Uchiha clan estate after coming back from the ninja academy, was immediately greeted by her father, Uchiha Fugaku. As usual, she watched Naruto, and as she saw him with Sasuke, she decided to leave and go the Hokage Tower before coming back her home. The man was leaning against the doorway to the house, still fully dressed. Otu-sama. The Uchiha girl bowed to the man upon seeing him. You went out for so long. Fugaku replied, a slight displeased tone to his voice. Where were you? I've been looking for you for the past few hours. Izumi resisted the urge to frown. Forgive me. I went to Hokage-sama to discuss something with him. Meeting to Hokage-sama again, huh? Fugaku grumbled, his words sounding almost poisonous. He continued to speak, this time louder. Well, what then? What was so important that you had to find him frequently? Is there something wrong with the Anbu meeting there, Hokage-sama? She answered with a stoic voice. Fugaku's eyebrows drew together as he frowned. Izumi, I hope you didn't do what I think you did. You should know every decision I made for our clan's own good, and you're also an Uchiha. Izumi said nothing, instead she just took off her sandals and then passed Fugaku. She didn't even look at his eyes. You are my daughter and a part of this clan, and you will act like it. The man snapped. You have acted without my knowledge too many times. Such disobedience is unlike you, Izumi. Whatever you say, Otou-sama. She replied coldly. Fugaku's eyes narrowed as he tried to figure out whether Izumi was being sarcastic. It was difficult because she delivered the lines in her usual calm monotone, and let nothing show on her face. You know your actions reflect upon the clan, so the clan does wish to have a say in them. The elders are not as upset as they would have been had your actions not been in line with their wishes. You are in Anbu now, and we had hoped for you to be eventually. Yes, I know, Izumi thought with a slight mental sneer. It is good that there is an Uchiha in the Hokage's elites. Fugaku continued. He pinned his oldest daughter with a look that was meant to be cowing, but she was unaffected. You realize your position now. You are the pipe connecting the clan with the village. Do you understand? The words themselves were pretty innocuous. Izumi was a link between the two, all right. But reading behind Fugaku's words revealed the truth. The Uchiha clan head wanted information to flow through that pipe, from Konoha to the Uchiha. Izumi was a spy. This was it. This was where Izumi encountered her difficult decision between village and family. Acquiesce, and allow the Uchiha to believe her theirs. Or stand, and throw a wrench in their works. Izumi inhaled, closing her eyes. No, she said softly. Across from her, Fugaku froze. What did you say? The Uchiha clan head's voice was low and disbelieving. Izumi's head lifted. She met her father's eyes fearlessly. I said no, Otou-sama. I am not a pipe connecting the clan to the village. You imply that the two are separate entities. I disagree. The village is the clan is the village. We are a part of Konoha, there should be no need for anyone to act as a bridge. Izumi started walking. It troubles me that you cannot see that. With that, the Uchiha heiress bowed shallowly, turned, and left, all before Fugaku could collect himself from his shock at being denied outright by his daughter. Izumi walked sedately to the outer porch of the house, and from there, shunshined off the compound in a couple of bounds. She stopped once she was enclosed by the thick canopied trees of one of Konoha's many parks, and leaned heavily against a nearby trunk, trembling slightly. It was becoming even more difficult to contain her emotions around her father. Izumi really wanted to show her anger and frustration to Fugaku and Uchiha elders. Thinking about what could happen, think about the disaster Fugaku was leading the clan into, Izumi was beyond simple anger. The Uchiha girl took a couple deep, calming breaths. Losing control now would only made a mess of it. Izumi sighed and tilted her head back, staring through the gaps in the foliage above her. The sky was a delicate, pure blue, free of clouds. Almost peaceful. Izumi walked into the family garden. A nice place to go when she needed some time to himself. Coming to the pond, she noticed Sasuke was kneeling by the water, watching the water. She looked depressed. Sasuke, are you okay? She asked worriedly. Her little sister looked up, and she could see that pain and fear in those eyes. Something happened today, Oni-chan. The Uchiha heiress took a seat beside her. What was it? Naruto. The elder Uchiha looked at the girl, who in turn, was looking at her hands. At the blood that was dried on them. Is he okay? Did you two spar today? The girl nodded her head and sighed. We sparred a little and then he said he wanted to reward me for my progression. Izumi quirked a brow. Looked like Naruto and Sasuke was closer much more. That was good thing, but it didn't explain why her sister was so depressed. Sasuke sighed once more. Naruto wanted to test if I can get Sharingan, so. Izumi listened intently. He created a clone and told me to it. Understanding overcame Izumi. She knew her little sister. No way Sasuke could bring herself to her best friend, even if it was a clone. He threatened to attack if I didn't fight the clone, and he did that then as I didn't do anything. I didn't have a choice but fight back and, something went wrong. Izumi jerked when Sasuke's voice shook. She looked over her appearance again. The fear in her eyes, the small, barely noticeable shaking. She didn't write. There was blood everywhere. I lost it and started screaming and crying while he's telling me he'd be fine. Then, his pulse was gone and there was this horrible pain and it burned. Sasuke looked into Izumi's eyes then, and the elder Uchiha reeled back. The Sharingan, which meant she had actually lied the boy. Shit. How was this going to turn out? Especially with how her sister was acting. I lost it, and the tears came even harder than before. Just then, I heard his voice. The kid was hallucinating too. Naruto pretended to let me him. He used his clone and did it to try and activate my Sharingan. He was standing there. No blood and looking perfectly fine. Oni-chan, I was never so scared before. It was horrible. I thought I hated him. And then, there she was. The youngest Uchiha was shaking even more as tears fell from her eyes. I know he's alive, but the whole thing really scared me. Why'd my best friend only to find out it wasn't real? Izumi let out the breath she didn't know she was holding. Naruto was alive. A horrible way to awaken the Sharingan, but surprisingly effective. Her sister was just suffering some severe PTSD. She reached out and poked the girl's forehead. Sasuke froze and looked at her. Did you just poke me? If he's alive, then you don't have to worry. Go inside, get some rest before dinner. Clean up. Tomorrow, I'll teach you how to use the Sharingan. As expected, Sasuke's mood brightened and she nodded before running to the house. Well, she's really close to him. Yes, Okawa-san. Just looking at her reaction. What Naruto did had quite a negative effect on her. Izumi stated with a sigh. I need to talk to him about this tomorrow, maybe more punishment. Oh God, what did that boy think? Sasuke may have nightmare tonight. Makoto nodded with a snicker, before she became serious. I have something to discuss you Izumi-chan. She said firmly. About the coup d'état of the Uchiha clan and what we need to do to deal with it. After the sparring with Sasuke and helping her awake the Sharingan, Naruto didn't come back home and decided to go to the library. After greeting the librarian Ayumi, who just replied by her own great and soft smile, he went straight to his base on the upstairs. Naruto closed the door carefully before approaching bookshelves and took some books, most of them was historical ones. Kurama raised his eyebrow at that. Don't you always read ninjutsu or fuinjutsu ones? Why suddenly taking an interest on history, and that book? The fox said, glancing at the book with the Uchiha symbol on the cover. Its writer was Uchiha Kagami. There is something I need to find out more. The blonde replied, still keeping on collect books. The more I contact to Sasuke, Makoto Obasan and Izumi Nichan, the more I realized many mysteries of the Uchiha clan, especially their bloodline, Sharingan. I want to know more the history of them. Senju Tobarama's information is useful but not really enough, most of them was warns about the dangers of the Uchiha clan if they got many power. It was not like Naruto disrespect the Nadaime Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village, but the blonde felt that he could be a little guarded of the allied clan. The Kyuubi snorted, I can tell you about them He grumbled with a tone that Naruto was sure that the ancient fox was sulking. Naruto facepalmed, and hearing more about your ego with the Uchiha clan. No thanks. He replied, ignored a very loud and aggressive growl from the fox. Anyway, you used to say that in the first awakened, each Sharingan usually will have only one tomo, but in Sasuke's case. I saw it. She immediately gained 2 tomos in each of her eyes. Kurama said in a serious tone, it's very rare and if I remember right, her older sister is also similar. And Izumi Nichan is one of the strongest kunoichi and an Anbu captain in the village now. Man, I think I can see what Sasuke will become in the future. Naruto commented with a soft smile. He took the book and started reading. Let's see. Mangekyo Sharingan. Oh, it's here. Naruto focused on the page of the book, he looked interested to draws on it. Wow, many different forms of Mangekyo. This is Uchiha Izuki's, that is Uchiha Baru's, probably greatly varied. And, Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw words, Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, what's that? He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Hey Kurama, do you know about this? The fox just sighed in annoyance. Ask me first will do everything more easy than reading boring book and you just do now. He then answered, of course I know. Madoka used to use it to control me after all. He stated with a growl, like you know, Mangekyo Sharingan is an advanced form of the Sharingan that has only been activated by a handful of Uchiha. It retains all of the Sharingan's generic abilities and grants powerful abilities. Uchiha assumed it's a gift for growing power. Mangekyo Sharingan takes various forms, and there was a calm silence before Kurama continue, which made Naruto feel curious but he still let his partner continue. The fox closed his eyes, trying to hold his discomfort. And it is initially awakened by the trauma suffered from witnessing unimaginable emotional pain, example the death of someone close to the user. However, some Uchiha mistakenly believed that they just got it once feed their closest people so they. I think you know it. Kurama completed with an angry growl. Damn, he really hated whenever he thought about it. It wasn't like he was feeling pity for Uchiha bastards. Meanwhile, It wasn't difficult to see Naruto's brow cold with sweat. He was looking at Mangekyo Sharingan in the page with profound mixed emotions. Yes, he could guess what those Uchiha did and it disgusted him. There was no denying that Mangekyo holding extraordinary powers, so it was no wonder many Uchiha lust for it. But as far as the cost of the deaths of their closest people, more like a curse than a gift. Wait a minute, what about eternal Mangekyo Sharingan? The tailed beast just snorted. I don't know about it much. I only can say it's like the stronger form of Mangekyo, or at least what I think. Kurama recalled the past, he too were fed up with them though. Madoka said that it's proof an Uchiha has continued to push forward despite experiencing great losses. Before that bitch used those cursed eyes to control me. He said with hatred in his tone. Quote. This might be bad. The blonde boy replied quietly. Naruto still listened to Kurama's words carefully while still kept on turning the page. According to information on it, a certain number of Uchiha activated Mangekyo, but there was only Uchiha Madoka got eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. This was so weird. Naruto thought of Uchiha Izumi. Sasuke said that her Sharingan was in the highest level. It wasn't really right though. She, of course, didn't know about eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, so it was understandable. The Uzumaki wondered what kind of trauma Izumi went through to awake her Mangekyo. Losing someone close to you, it was nothing more than a nightmare. And Sasuke, quote. Kid, I hope you don't think about stupid things such as helping that little Uchiha brat activating Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto snapped out of his thought as the Tallid beast spoke out. You know how dangerous it is. Don't even think of the trick you just used. It's totally useless. The fox said dryly. Naruto sighed in annoyance, he should have known it. The fox was really attentive. I'm not going to do that now. Maybe in the next few years as Sasuke was at least a chunin. But now, Naruto looked at he book, I don't think I may do that. No way Sasuke will her family, and I never harmed to her family just to help her get Mangekyo. I also don't know what kind of trauma is worse than losing our closest people. It seemed impossible. Maybe it's really just her family, at least now. Kurama whispered to himself. In Naruto and that Uchiha brat, that feeling. Hashirama and Madoka, Ashura and Izuha, no way. Alright, I think we should pause here. Naruto suddenly spoke out. I want to research more information, but Sharingan problems really puzzle my head. We will go to relax a little. Leaving the library, Naruto took to the forest to follow up on one of his other favorite pastimes, foraging. Though he didn't seem like the type, as of late it has become one of his many acts of habit. You never know that how many things the nature can teach you. Was what Naruto read from the book he found in his secret room in the library, and he must admit that it was totally right. After making friends with much of the wildlife surrounding his village and getting to know the ways of the woodses, the Uzumaki had been able to absorb more skills and knowledge in the forests. The amount of free time he was able to spend with the monkey tribes and animals of Konoha's lands taught him many things, like a lot of the moves he used in his taijutsu style, how to survive with nothing at all, what plants were good for eating, what weren't, what things could save your life, and by extension the ability to talk to a lot of creatures that hadn't developed the ability to commune through human speech. Naruto knew where to go when he was in trouble. He knew how to make makeshift homes, he knew how to hide, how to run, how to swing, how to climb, how to use his feet as hands, basically anything a wild animal could do. This also explained his extraordinary fighting sense, incredible high level of timing, speed and body strength. I have to say that you build up a lot of body strength over the years hanging with the monkey's kit. Kurama commented. Yeah, the writer of those books is surely an awesome ninja. I learned many useful things from them, even basic ones. Naruto replied with a foxy grin. You will be more surprised when you know the writer of that book much more. The fox thought with a smirk. Don't forget that I taught me too, kid, and it's not like everyone have the honor to be instructed by the mighty Kurama-sama. Kurama said proudly. Yeah, Furball sensei, Naruto mocked. Quote. Shut up, you brat. Kurama grumbled and Naruto just laughed. Weaving himself a bag from long grass, leaves and vines, Naruto began a long walkabout of the thickest part of the woods. Scurrying up trees, digging through bushes, searching crevasses, he left no stone unturned in his search for the best things the natural world could provide. Within half an hour he was able to grab a whole sack full of stuff, even some rare goodies. Well, you know you will gonna make a fortune if you sell them for a good price back home. Kurama inferred while he looked at stuffs. Come on, I'm not the merchant and I'm also not interested in money. Naruto answered with a sigh. Beside, you're a tailed beast, you don't need money so they will belong to me if I sell them. Touché. The fox pouted but Naruto ignored him and got back to his work. While Naruto was picking mushrooms from a wide clearing and humming a pleasant tune, he suddenly noticed further up the hillside something out of place. Depositing what he had in his hands into his basket, he left it on the ground where it was and went over to the area in question to check out. What they found up the path was a ruined patch of land scarred from what could only be described as an intense battle. There were craters punched all over the place, chunks blasted out of trees, gashes and scars carved into the land and wood, and scorch marks burned here and there. There was also traces of blood, never a good sign. Perplexed, the blonde ran a hand over a particularly large scar in a tree. Looks like something happened, Naruto said. It's quite new, that means they have just been here for a short time. Kurama deduced, observing traces of blood. They led towards the waterfall. It's not hurt to check a little, right? Naruto asked. Just be careful, Kit. The fox became serious. We can't know their ally or enemy. I know Kurama. After running for some time, Naruto met a small waterfall, only 2 stories tall and one of the many that dotted Konoha's beautiful landscape. This one was fed into by the Naka River, the serpentine ink-blue waters that twined their way almost mid through the Uchiha district, but it was far enough from the main branch, that it was safely outside of clan grounds. The waterfall fed into crystal clear springs, dotted with wet, mossy rocks and surrounded by crisp blades of grass that stood like a disciplined row of soldiers flattened back by the brisk autumn breeze. It's strange, no one is here, Naruto said after looking around. This doesn't make sense. The blood is still new, there is surely someone. He checked around carefully, he then caught something in his sight. Naruto looked up. A figure was thrown like a broken rag doll through the air, arcing backwards into a near-perfect U-shape, before breaking through the waterfall barrier and brutally hitting the ashy volcanic rock. There was a sickening crunch sound, of jarred broken bones grinding against one another, and then the figure toppled, face forward, a puppet with strings cut, down into the shallow water. From where that person landed, ripples of blood-tinted water spread. What is that? Naruto, now hid after a big tree, focused entirely on the scene in front of him. Looking up at the top of the waterfall, the blond boy realized there were 2 other figures in there. They were clad entirely in black. None of their skin could be seen, from the hands covered in leather gloves to the face hidden behind their mask. Each of them was holding a sword. After looking down a little, they turned around and strode away.